What's up guys, Migi here. Going to be doing a deck profile on the deck that I used for the Las Vegas Store Regional. It was last week. Just getting into it now because I had a busy week. But yeah, I got first place and the leader that I used was Sun Gohan and Higher Dragon. So yeah, let's get to it. Alright, so as I mentioned before guys, this is a deck that I played. Played the Sun Gohan and Higher Dragon leader. Probably one of the better leaders of the format. It might be the best one. It's hard to say because I wouldn't say that this deck beats every other deck. It doesn't feel like, like 70-30 matchups. It feels sometimes like 55-45. So I think because of the variance, you're not always going to win. But it is a very solid leader nonetheless. So to start off, we're playing the 4 Higher Dragon Vanillas. This of course works in tandem with your leader. Once you're awakened, you're effectively drawing 2 cards per turn. And I think that in some cases it's actually better to get the draw offensively when you attack, because if you're swinging in at a unison that has 20k attack, which in this format there are a couple, you're able to knock down a marker without really expending any resources. So I did that a lot. I was able to get rid of those 20k unisons very easily in this deck. Just have a lot of 20k attackers, and the fact that your leader is basically a 20k attacker also, that helps out. So this is a blue-yellow deck, so we are playing the Violent Rush Bojack, and our free combo cost for Aegis, or free combo card for Aegis, is the Pinpoint Onslaught Bojack. And I guess the only thing worth noting here is that I played this over the hit because the activate battle can be kind of relevant if your opponent's trying to get rid of the Violent Rush Bojack by battle. So the activate battle gives it an extra 5k for the turn, kind of a Sensu Bean-like effect. That can come up, so I think for that reason alone, this is better than the hit. Next up, we got the 4 Zamasu the Eliminator. In my opinion, probably the best card of the format. And I can say that with confidence because you're either playing a deck that plays this, or you're playing a deck that doesn't outright lose to this card. So, I mean, just that alone, you can say this is the best card of the format. But, I mean, every effect that is on this card is relevant in some way. The ability to lose energy exhaust is relevant. The counterplay effect is obviously relevant. The auto effect is very relevant. And even the indestructible is relevant because there are some cards, this format, that force you to, KO or warp some of your battle cards, and you can choose Zamasu because it has indestructible and it doesn't leave. So you end up mitigating some of the damage from those effects. Some examples include the green Broly Unison, as well as the 8-drop Gogeta from the newest set. And yep, so the card is really strong. And next up, we're playing some more blue-yellow cards. I'm just gonna put them together because these are the rest of the blue-yellow cards. So these are kind of strange picks, I think. So most decks that I've seen play at least like 3 or 4 of these, and I think that's not wrong. I think that's okay to do, but I decided to play one because it didn't really fit the strategy that I was kind of going for, which is to try to end the game by turn 5. And if I'm playing this turn 4 or turn 5, then I'm just prolonging the game another turn, and I'm giving my opponent another opportunity to come back in the game and maybe even beat me on the crackback. Because even though this card is, you get a lot of value off of it by playing the 4 blocker tokens, it's not necessarily like a guarantee that you'll get to the next turn, because I'm actually playing a card that gets rid of this very easily, and all the tokens. We'll get to that soon. So for that reason, I did play only one. I guess I should mention that I did play the one just in case my opponent plays one against me and I didn't have the out, then I can play my own and yeah, hopefully I get to the next turn. But yeah, even as you can hear as I'm saying it, it doesn't seem like I'm too excited about this card because it's not like the best card. It has its weaknesses. And then also I'm playing Frost Deadly Poison as a one-of because there are a lot of cards that you can't actually interact with or you can't stop unless you have this card. Some examples include the 10-drop Fu, Strata and Mystery, and the 8-drop Bojack that blue plays. So if you play carefully and you leave up 3 energy open during your turn when you're trying to go for game, and they bring out the 8-drop Bojack thinking there's no way they can get rid of this, it's gonna help me spin some cards and do a lot of things. You can just, Frost Deadly Poison the Bojack and suddenly they're out of options, most likely. Especially if you have Goku Annihilation out. And you'll hear me say that a lot if I have Goku Annihilation out. Because usually it's a wrap if they're tapped out and you have that card out. But we'll get to that card. Next up for the defensive yellow cards, we're playing 3 Power of a Super Saiyan, defensive yellow extra cards, I mean. So this card is really strong and I wish I was playing 4. The only thing is space is kind of tight. I might rearrange some cards, take out some just to put in the 4th copy because it's really strong. Even, it's good defensively and also offensively because you can just use the activate battle just to draw a card and sometimes that makes a difference. It may not seem like it makes a difference, just 1 card, seeing an extra card, but when you're using your super combos, the Krillin ones that draw 2, and kind of draw the extra 3rd card, sometimes that 3rd card, it can matter over the course of a lot of games. So I really want to play 4 and I'll try to find space for it. And we're also playing 3 Final Flash. This is the best card in my opinion for the mirror match. You're basically telling your opponent you can't tap out even with the Bojack because I'm just gonna Final Flash it. If for some reason they do, then you just go for game and punish them. But yeah, really strong card. It doesn't feel as strong as it did when you Mecha Frieza was playing it, but it's still really good and I think still worthy of 3 copies in the main deck. I actually side the 4th copy of each of these cards. It just seems like you have to because they're good in different matchups. For example, this is better in aggro matchups and this is better in the mirror match. But yeah, both cards are really strong and I wish I was playing 4 of them in the main deck. Next up, we got the 2 Riposte. This card is pretty good, but I think the fact that it's a battle card makes it weaker than other cards. It does only cost 1 energy if you have like the 2 extra cards or an energy and drop area. But yeah, it just seems solid overall. I guess throughout the tournament it was okay. I used it a couple times, but I wouldn't say that it won me the game outright. I think even if I didn't drop this, I would have been able to defend those turns effectively without losing many resources. And you guys just got to be careful with this card. You don't want to tap out thinking you're safe when you activate this card, only to have it be counterplayed, and the fact that it never reaches the board can be detrimental to you. But yeah, overall, pretty decent. We'll keep it at 2. I wouldn't even side anymore. I don't think you need to side anymore. And probably the weirdest part of my deck is that I play 3 Basil and 1 Universe 9 Assemble. I guess if I had to explain why, I guess I would just say like read this card and tell me if it's good or not in a vacuum, right? So in a vacuum, you read the card and you say, oh, it's really strong. It draws 2 cards and it brings out another card. So it's like a +2, right? And then when you look at this card draws a card. So it's like your +3, right? For 2 energy. That seems really strong. The issue with this card is that it's an extra card and that it costs 2 energy, which can be a little bit expensive. And you don't get the full value unless your opponent has all of their energy tapped out. So resolving one of these per game is strong. However, seeing multiple copies and not being able to resolve multiples is bad. So for that reason, I did play the 1. So if I see it, I'm able to resolve it. And I think every time that I resolved it, it gave me too much advantage, and I would just win the game outright. But if you don't see it, then I mean, you're just playing the regular Higher Dragon deck. And to go with this, you have to play at least 3 copies of Basil. You can maybe cut it down to 2, but you're risking it. You would have to see a Krillin super combo to tuck 1 back in. So yeah, Basil, I noticed that people started cutting it down, and I see why. You know, it has like almost a permanent that's kind of like unique, and you know, it's just it totals up to, I guess, like 219 attacks. So that means your opponent needs to use 2 5k attacks in the late game, and it draws a card. So you get decent value even if you're just playing it for 1. But I can see why people would rather just play a longer game and play other cards instead of this card. But I think that if you're playing 3, you have to play this just to get the maximum value over the course of, you know, 5-6 round tournament. Next up, we're playing the best cards in yellow, which is 1 Swift Retaliation Cooler, 1 Son Goku Absolute Annihilation, and 1 Bergamo Ferocious Roar. So these cards, if you're able to resolve every single one of these cards, or sorry, not resolve, but rather play all of these cards optimally in a game, then you should win. You should. So ideally, this you play turn 3, and then pass turn, and then during your opponent's next turn, they're trying to, I don't know, do their own things, and then you can just Aegis, Power of a Super Saiyan, play Bergamo, tap them out, because once they're tapped out and you have this on the board, chances are you're able to game the following turn. So yeah, these are really strong, but you might be asking, like, why aren't you playing more copies of each of these? Well, this is limited to 1, so you can only play 1. For these, I do cite 2nd copies of these, but I don't main them because it's more of I guess, preference for me to build or construct my decks to have an average energy cost of 1 or less. So if you add up like the total cost of, or sorry, not the total cost, but kind of the effective cost of all of my cards and average them out, it turns out it's like exactly 1 cost. And the way I calculate that, I guess, maybe this is going off topic, but you know, for example, Senzu Bean would be considered a -1 cost because it gives you an energy. But yeah, it turns out that it's a cost of 1. Kind of like, I guess I would consider that an amortized average cost of my battle cards, or any card really, even the extra cards. So yeah, that's why I didn't play more of these, because if I play more of them, they're 3 costs and they mess up my average. Next up, playing 2 Raiders Warcry. Not much to say about this card. It's pretty decent. It works really well with Aegis. But the thing about it is that it does cost 2, and so if you have multiples and you're only able to use Aegis once per turn, then it can clog. Which I guess if your strategy is like prolonging the game to go to like turn 6, 7, possibly 8, then this seems, I think, more justifiable to play at more copies than 2. But otherwise, if you're playing the deck like I'm trying to play it, where you're trying to end the game by turn 5, I think 2 is enough, and playing more can actually take you back. You know, this could be another card that can help you instead. But overall, it's pretty good. Next up, we're playing the yellow Trunks Unison. I would say this card for me was actually MVP. Or maybe not MVP, but a card that I underestimated going into the tournament that ended up, you know, blowing my expectations out of the water. The fact that it's dual attack and 20k means you're going to be able to easily get rid of any unisons. And also the -3 effect adds to this deck something that yellow has lacked for a long time, which is hard removal. And there are a lot of ways to tap your opponent's cards to use the -3 effectively. You know, you have Power of a Super Saiyan, you have the Raider's Warcry, you have the Zamasu counterplay. Even his +0 effect taps cards. It does KO them though, but yeah. So you have a lot of ways to tap cards, and the -3 is just going to get you a lot of value. So there were some games where I would actually, if you know my opponent was really defensive and they were stalling the game to like turn 6, 7, you know, there were turns where I would be able to play 2 of these just because Sensu Bean is a card, and you know, 2 dual attackers is really strong, especially if you're using Sensu Bean on them. That's kind of a trend with this deck, where you're playing a lot of dual attackers and you're getting the maximum value out of your Sensu Beans. Next up, one Poutine. I'll be honest, this card's pretty bad. I wouldn't play it ever again. I thought it would be, you know, kind of good against like overall type cards, but overall it just seemed underwhelming. It was in my hand most of the time whenever I saw it. I honestly wouldn't play this card again. Use, you know, pretend this is not here. Then SCR choice is the Kai. I don't really think there's any other SCR that you can play in place of this, if I'm being honest. This effect is, the effective board wipe is just too good. It gets rid of unisons and battle cards. You could be, you know, completely losing. Your opponent might be like outplaying you by a lot, and you drop this card and you can just turn the tides. Yeah, I wouldn't play anything other than this in terms of SCRs. And we're playing one Hidden Power E Supreme Kai. It can be a Champa, no difference. I think a lot of, against blue, you just have to get them to 2 because you'll draw so much, you probably will find this card, and then you just can end the game with your leader or unison, or also even a Zamasu the Eliminator because it has indestructible something, or something that has barrier like Bojack, the Violent Rush one, or some Goku, Absolute Annihilation. Anything that you feel safe going for game with, and then using the Kai to give a double strike. I mean, you know, your opponent's not really at like 8 life, right? They're really at 7 if you're trying to end the game like that. Really good. And for overarms, I played 2. And this is the card that, you know, I kind of mentioned before that gets rid of the Apocalypse Schemer really well. You can get rid of all the tokens and the Goku Black itself. And, you know, you paid 0 for this and they paid 4. Well, kind of 3 because they untap 1. But yeah, really strong card. I was really only playing it for that reason though, I'll be honest, for the Apocalypse Schemer. Yeah, you can get rid of other cards, but I don't think there are many other cards that you like feel like you really have to get rid of, because your game plan most of the time is just trying to go for game, as opposed to kind of playing control. So overall, it was really good, but I think this overall is actually better when you think about what the deck's trying to do. You know, dual attack 25k. It's very simple, but it's very effective. You can give it 2 beans and it's hitting for 35, and then each of those beans gave you an energy, and it costs 0 to play this card. It just seems too good, to be honest. Too good. And the last cards in the main deck are the 4 equivalent super combo and the 4 Sensu Bean. I mentioned these cards a couple of times. Maybe I should have shown these cards first. But yeah, Sensu Bean, broken. Krillin super combo, broken. Any of the draw 2 super combos. I feel like they should be played almost, unless your strategy is very niche, you should be playing the draw 2 super combos. And Sensu Bean just seems really strong. I always try to play a deck that plays 4 Sensu Beans because I tend to shift towards a more aggro strategy in the later games for most of the decks that I play, even if they start off kind of control. And Sensu Bean just lets me, you know, do that. I like to do this offensively as opposed to defensively. I actually think you get more value that way because you're putting a lot more pressure on your opponent. Yeah, this super combo is really good. Also, the effect to put back a card in the deck is actually pretty relevant because you don't want to deck out. That's actually a real issue. And also, it's good for putting back targets that you need to play from deck. For example, the Basil for Universe 9 Assemble. So yeah, both of these cards are some of my favorites in this deck, and I feel like you have to max out on both. The effects just kind of snowball. So like you'll use two, one of these, draw 2 cards, maybe you drew into another one, and a Senzu Bean, or a Power of Super Saiyan. Maybe that Power of Super Saiyan draws you into another Senzu Bean. It just, like, the fact that you're playing 4 of each, it helps the consistency. And over the course of many games in the tournament, it was a best of 3 tournament, so I think I played like maybe 11 games in total. This was, I think it had an impact playing 4 of these, as opposed to maybe if I played 3 of these and 1 Zamasu. I don't think that Zamasu would have given me the same value. But yeah, that's the main deck. Next up is the side deck. So for the side deck, let's start off with the cards that I already play in the main deck that I just wanted more copies of. I really want these against blue, and I want this against the mirror match, and I want this against aggro. So that's the reason I'm playing more copies. I wish I had more space in the main deck. I would probably play all 4 of these in the main deck. But games 2 and 3, you're able to put these cards in, and yeah, they put in a lot of work. Like, seeing the extra copy of this is actually really good, because probably they'll side for this card, so they'll probably get rid of at least 1 copy, and if you drop the second one, then you put your opponent in a pretty bad spot, because they have to find the second out to it, which is unlikely. Well, it depends what they sided, but yeah. Next up, played 1 Tyrannical Blow and 1 Crusher Ball. So these counterplay cards, they do different things for different matchups. You would want to side this. I actually side this in the mirror match. The reason being, it's good to Crusher Ball the overwhelm cards, like the Fighting Against Fate, but also against Epalco Schemer. If you could use this in response to the auto that plays the tokens, and all the tokens come played in rest mode. And that's actually the reason why I played Crusher Ball over Giant Ball, because Giant Ball only chooses 1. And also something else that might be relevant is that Crusher Ball gets around barrier. And Tyrannical Blow is good against those the counterattack floodgate cards like Topo and Oceanus. So Oceanus actually can stop this deck in its tracks, because you draw so much that you're actually in danger of milling out. And you do have the Zamasu Eliminator for those cards, but it's easier to just play 1 energy for them than it is to play 2 energy for them. And also, maybe you just already used Zamasu Eliminator multiple times throughout that game, and you don't have one in your hand. So this card is pretty good for that reason. It also has an added effect that it negates the skills of Unison. That might come up. And I played 1 Word Slug. So I guess another controversial pick. Most people would play at least 3, possibly 4 in the totality of their main and side deck. But I decided to only play 1, because I would only really want to put it in if it like outright wins me the game against a certain matchup. For example, say I would have played against Universe 7 Gohan, the new one, the red one, then this card just shuts that deck down, right? And I just kind of auto win. But against other matchups, for example, like in the mirror match, it doesn't necessarily win you the game outright. So I would say that it's not needed at 3 or 4. At 1, it seems decent. I never sided it in, of course. And also, I think that if I had to choose between playing this at 3 or Goku Annihilation at 3, I would always want to choose Goku Annihilation at 3 instead. Also, this doesn't have deflect, so it's susceptible to Zamasu counterplay, whereas Goku Annihilation isn't. Then I play one Foolish Rider and Mystery. This is for the mirror match, but I would only drop it down if they only have if they have 2 or less energy open, because it could get Frost Deadly poisoned. But other than that, I guess it would be decent against other rogue strategies that try to stall the game, but you know, don't have an answer to this card. In that case, you know, this card can win you the game. It's basically a second SCR. But it's not that good against blue because you would have to clear the Unison first and then drop this. And if you're trying to clear the Unison, maybe you had to pay energy for that, so then that means you need more energy. It seems like a lot of work to drop this against blue because they can just God Sealing it. So yeah, I probably wouldn't side it ever against blue. I play one Jiren, Survival of the Fittest. I think you have to side this card because you have to respect the Android 17, the Turning the Tides one. Even if like you're only playing one copy, sure, but maybe like turns, or rather game 2, they saw it, and then game 3, maybe they have to side out now the Turning the Tides, so that's something you don't have to worry about. Or if you can just bluff it, you can just have 2 energy open and they can never Turning the Tides you. Because if they do, then and you do have this card, then you just outright win. So I think this card is a mandatory side card. Next up, we're playing 2 Koitsukai Mechanical Courage. This card I sided for the mirror match. Well, actually that was my intention, but I actually didn't play any mirror matches. And I did end up putting it against blue, but I'll be honest, it was pretty underwhelming against blue. It really only is good against Zamasu the Eliminator and the 4-drop Bojack, the one that has dual attack and spins a card back when it's played, the one they play off Galactic Buster. But other than that, I mean, their 8-drop Bojack is too big. It's not gonna get affected by this. And I can't really think of any other cards that they play during my turn. So overall, pretty underwhelming against blue, but I can see it being really strong against the mirror match, and for that reason, I'd like to keep it in the side deck. Next up, 2 Godly Destruction Whis. This card is strong against Soul Striker. I mean, if they can't out this, their deck isn't really doing anything, to be honest. So the way you play against Soul Striker is you'll stall the game out, or you'll stall their Awaken turn using Zamasu the Eliminator. You know, you keep up 2 energy pretty much every turn, and they have to respect the Zamasu. And they won't be able to Awaken. So until like turn 5 where they're able to play a Unison for 5 energy. But in that case, you should already have this out, and if it just makes it a lot more difficult for them. Just say it that way. So yeah, it seems pretty good at 2. Lastly, we're playing 2 Vegeta Unison of Fury. This card in theory should go in a lot of matchups, even though I didn't side it that much. But it has a lot of cool applications. So the -3 effect, I think, is more important than the -1 effect now, because you have an option to tap an energy, which can proc your Bergamo to tap an extra 2 energy. So even if your opponent felt safe having 3 energy up, you can still easily just kind of steal the game from there. And also because, you know, even though this deck doesn't really fear playing against Hachiak, it can be kind of difficult if you don't draw the right cards. So if you side these in, I don't think you can lose against Hachiak, because you have your dual attack Trunks Unison swings. That's 2 swings, and then chances are they won't be able to get rid of it. So it passes back to you, then you have your leader swing, you have your 2 Unison swings, you have your 1 battle card swing, and then you have like you play this card down, you have an extra 2 swings. It just seems like a lot of attacks against Hatchiyak. I didn't play against any Hatchiyak, but I did see some in the room, so it could have happened. And yeah, card seems pretty decent overall. So that was the deck profile. Hope you guys enjoy. I gotta say, overall, the tournament was really fun. All my opponents were really cool, and it was not easy. I think I started getting a headache like around round 3, just playing against blue and other decks that, you know, stall the game out. It feels a bit slow, and you really have to think, and yeah. But overall, a strong deck, and I would recommend anyone to try it out, even if you don't want to play it at an event, but at least to know how to beat it, because the deck is not perfect. It has weaknesses. But yeah, it does have less weaknesses than other decks. Overall, strong though. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy. Please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, as well as following us over at Twitch, at twitch.tv/thedoods_. We try to stream on Fridays, like in the evenings. This is we're in the West Coast, so take that into consideration. And yeah, we'll just like stream games, and you can just come and hang out with us. Usually I have a lot of dudes over here at my place, and we just play cards, you know. Shout out to all of my teammates for helping me test for this event. Specifically Edwin, he helped me test out the blue matchup because I wasn't totally sure how to play it at first, and playing against him really helped. So yeah, later dudes.